The rain had been falling over Atlanta for 2 hours, the kind that turned parking lots into shallow lakes and made the neon signs along Peachtree Street blur into watercolor smears. Maya Brooks pushed through the glass doors of the 24-hour convenience store, her black and white hotel uniform clinging to her shoulders where the rain had soaked through during the sprint from her car. Her hands shook slightly as she grabbed a wire basket. Not from the cold. "Aisle 4 for baby formula," the clerk called out without looking up from his phone, barely registering her presence. Maya nodded, moving quickly past the fluorescent-lit aisles. Baby formula, gauze, antiseptic, bottled water. The list ran through her mind on repeat, drowning out the other thoughts. The ones about the massive tattooed man she'd left hidden in the hotel's linen storage room, his blood still damp on the towels she'd used to pack his wound. The newborn wrapped in yellow cloth, barely 3 days old, according to the hospital bracelet she'd glimpsed. The Mafia boss. She didn't know his real name yet, hadn't asked, wasn't sure she wanted to know. But she'd seen the metal card in his pocket, the one with the crime syndicate insignia that made her stomach drop. Everyone in Atlanta knew that symbol, even if they pretended not to. You didn't work hospitality in this city without learning which marks meant danger, which tables to serve quickly and forget immediately. But the baby, God, the baby changed everything. Maya reached for the formula, checking the label twice, though her vision kept blurring. Exhaustion, adrenaline, fear. She couldn't tell anymore. Her double shift at the Harrington Grand should have ended 3 hours ago. She should be home, soaking her feet, checking on her grandmother, maybe finally responding to her sister's texts about Christmas plans. Instead, she was buying supplies for a mafia boss and his infant son, while armed men in expensive suits searched the hotel lobby. The automatic doors hissed behind her as she headed toward checkout. Almost done. Just get back, keep the baby quiet, figure out the rest later. "Ma'am," the voice came from her left, firm, authoritative, with an edge that made her stomach drop. Maya turned. 2 police officers stood blocking the exit, one with his hand resting casually on his belt, the other holding a radio that crackled with dispatch chatter. Both white, both watching her with the kind of attention that made her skin crawl with familiar dread. "Yes?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "We need to check your bag." The taller officer gestured toward the canvas tote hanging from her shoulder, the one she'd grabbed from her locker, still stained with the mafia boss's blood on the inside lining where she'd pressed towels against his wound. Maya's heart hammered. "Why?" "Reasonable suspicion of shoplifting." His eyes traveled over her uniform, the wet hair plastered to her forehead, the exhaustion written across her face. "Store's been hit 3 times this week. We're checking everyone who fits the profile." Fits the profile. The words landed like they always did, heavy, coded, damning. "I haven't stolen anything." Maya held up her basket, items clearly visible, receipt waiting to be printed. "I haven't even checked out yet." "Nevertheless." The second officer stepped closer, hand extended. "The bag, ma'am." Around them, the handful of late-night shoppers slowed, watching. The clerk finally looked up from his phone. Maya felt the weight of their stares, the familiar heat of humiliation crawling up her neck. She thought about the mafia boss, bleeding and barely conscious. She thought about the baby, alone in that storage room. She thought about the men in black suits who were probably right now checking employee lockers, asking questions, getting closer. She couldn't afford this delay. She couldn't afford the attention, but she especially couldn't afford what they'd find if they searched thoroughly enough. "Do you have a warrant?" Maya asked quietly, knowing the answer. "Don't need one. Probable cause." The officer's hand moved to his belt again, a subtle threat. "You gonna cooperate, or do we need to make this difficult?" Maya's jaw tightened. 27 years of these encounters had taught her the script, the careful dance of survival. Stay calm. Don't give them reason. Prove you're not what they've already decided you are. She handed over the tote. The first officer dumped its contents onto the checkout counter with theatrical aggression. Wallet, keys, chapstick, the small first aid kit she always carried, loose receipts, a protein bar wrapper. He pawed through everything, checking pockets, shaking out her wallet, examining her work ID from the hotel. "What's this?" He held up the first aid kit, suspicious. "I work hospitality. Guests get headaches, blisters. It's basic supplies." He opened it anyway, scattering bandages and pain relievers across the counter. Maya's hands clenched at her sides. The checker had stopped even pretending to work, phone now recording. Another customer whispered to her companion. The second officer leaned in. "You seem nervous." "I'm tired," Maya said flatly. "It's almost midnight. I've been working since 2 this afternoon. I just want to buy formula and go home." "Formula?" The first officer's eyebrows rose. "You got a baby?" "I'm helping a friend." "What friend?" "That's personal. Everything's personal until it isn't." His hand moved deeper into her tote, finding the inner pocket she'd forgotten about, the one where she'd shoved everything from the Mafia boss's pockets when she first treated him, not wanting to leave evidence in the storage room. Her breath caught. His fingers emerged holding something small, rectangular, metallic. An ID card, but not the kind civilians carried. The officer's face went slack as he read it, the color draining so fast Maya actually watched it happen in real time. His partner leaned in to look, then stepped back sharply like he'd been burned. "Jesus Christ," the second officer breathed. The first officer's hands were trembling now, the card held between two fingers like it might explode. "Ma'am, why didn't you tell us?" Maya snatched the ID back, her own shock barely contained because she'd forgotten she had it. Forgotten that 3 years ago she'd accepted that position, that clearance, that authority she never wanted to use. The federal contractor position with the Department of Justice that she kept buried because being a black woman with power made her a target in different, more dangerous ways. "Tell you what?" Her voice was ice now, all the fear crystallized into fury. "That you had no right to stop me? That reasonable suspicion is code you hide behind? That this—" She held up the ID, letting them see the clearance level that outranked not just them, but their captain and his captain. "Means I could have your badges for this?" The store had gone absolutely silent. "Ma'am, we were just—" the first officer stammered. "Profiling," Maya finished. "The word you're looking for is profiling." She swept her belongings back into her tote, movements sharp and controlled. The officers stood frozen, probably calculating their careers, their pension, how badly this could go if she decided to push it. But Maya was calculating something else entirely. "Why were you really here?" she asked suddenly. "This isn't random harassment. You were looking for someone." The second officer's jaw worked. "We received a tip. A woman matching your description was seen leaving the Harrington Grand Hotel with suspicious items, acting nervous, possibly aiding a fugitive. Maya's blood turned to ice water. They knew. Someone had already called the police. The hunters had infiltrated law enforcement, were using badges and uniforms to tighten the net. The Mafia boss was right. The ambush went deeper than family betrayal. What fugitive? Maya asked, voice carefully neutral. Can't discuss an active investigation. But you can harass innocent civilians in convenience stores based on tips. She yanked her tote onto her shoulder. I'm leaving, and if I see either of you following me, I'll file a formal complaint that will end both your careers before sunrise. Are we clear? They nodded, mute and pale. Maya grabbed her basket, threw cash at the checker, and walked out without waiting for change. The rain hit her like a wall, but she barely felt it. Her mind raced as she moved toward her car, parked 3 rows back in the nearly empty lot. They were using the police to find him, which meant she couldn't trust any official channels, which meant the storage room was compromised, or soon would be, which meant she had maybe 20 minutes to get back, get the Mafia boss and the baby out, and disappear before this entire night turned into a bloodbath. Her car keys were in her hand when she noticed the black sedan parked diagonally across from her, engine running, windows tinted so dark they reflected nothing but rain. Maya's steps slowed. The driver's window lowered 2 inches, just enough for her to see eyes watching from inside. Not cops, something worse. She forced herself to keep walking, to open her car door normally, to act like she hadn't noticed. But as she pulled out of the parking lot, the sedan pulled out too, maintaining a careful 3-car distance. Maya's hands tightened on the wheel. Her phone sat in the cup holder, the Mafia boss's shattered device still stuffed in her work locker back at the hotel where she'd left it, afraid someone would trace it. She had no backup, no one she could call. No one who'd believe her, even if she tried. Just a bleeding Mafia boss, a 3-day-old baby, and her own stubborn refusal to let them die on her watch. 20 minutes, she thought, pressing harder on the accelerator. I need 20 minutes. The Harrington Grand's lights glowed through the rain ahead, beautiful and familiar, and suddenly treacherous as a trap waiting to spring. Maya Brooks had clocked in for a double shift 15 hours ago. She was about to work the most important hours of her life. Version 2. Inspirational tone. The rain wasn't the problem. Maya Brooks had worked through worse, through Georgia summers that turned the hotel kitchen into a sauna, through winter ice storms that knocked out power for 3 days, through the personal disasters that had shaped her 27 years into something harder and more resilient than she'd ever planned. No, the rain was just weather. The problem was the blood under her fingernails that wouldn't quite wash out in the convenience store bathroom. The problem was the mental image she couldn't shake. A massive man with tear tattoos and desperate eyes, cradling a newborn like it was the last good thing in a world determined to destroy them both. The problem was that Maya had made a choice 2 hours ago in that alley behind the Harrington Grand Hotel, and now she had to live with the consequences. She moved through the late-night store with practiced efficiency, grabbing baby formula and first aid supplies while her hotel uniform dripped rainwater onto the linoleum. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and clinical, making everything feel surreal. This is just another shift, she told herself, just another problem to solve. Except it wasn't. And the two police officers blocking the exit proved it. "We need to check your bag." Maya looked at them, really looked, the way her grandmother had taught her to assess threats and calculate survival. White, mid-30s, hands resting on belts with practiced ease. They'd done this before, many times. "On what grounds?" she asked calmly. "Reasonable suspicion." There it was, the phrase that had haunted her since she was 16 and first learned that existing while black in certain spaces meant presumed guilt until proven otherwise. She could have argued, could have cited the law, demanded warrants, made a scene. But somewhere in the Harrington Grand Hotel, a baby was depending on her to come back. A bleeding man had trusted her with his life, and armed hunters in expensive suits were probably already searching the corridors where she'd hidden them. Time mattered more than pride. Maya handed over her tote. They tore through it with aggressive thoroughness, dumping contents, checking pockets, scrutinizing every item like she was a criminal instead of a woman buying formula at midnight. Around them, phones came out. Shoppers whispered. The clerk watched with uncomfortable fascination. Maya had been here before. Different store, different cops, same humiliation, same assumption of criminality, same violation of dignity. But this time, something was different. The first officer's hand emerged from her bag holding a small metallic card, the federal ID she'd forgotten she was carrying. The clearance level she'd kept secret for 3 years because power and blackness made for dangerous combinations in a world that wanted her invisible. His face went white. "Ma'am, I don't. Why didn't you?" Maya took the ID back, her hand steady even as her heart raced. She'd spent years downplaying this authority, hiding behind service uniforms and "yes, ma'am" responses because it was safer to be underestimated. But tonight, she couldn't afford safety. She could only afford survival. "You want to know why I didn't tell you?" Her voice was quiet, controlled, devastating. "Because I shouldn't have to prove my humanity with credentials. Because reasonable suspicion shouldn't mean searching black women in stores for crimes that haven't happened. Because my federal clearance doesn't make me more innocent. It just makes you more afraid." The officers stood frozen, careers flashing before their eyes. "But here's what matters right now," Maya continued, sweeping her belongings back into her tote. "You weren't here randomly, were you? Someone called you, gave you my description, told you to watch for a woman from the Harrington Grand acting suspicious." The second officer's jaw tightened. Confirmation. Maya's mind raced, pieces falling into place. The hunters weren't just searching the hotel, they'd weaponized the police, turned law enforcement into their eyes and ears, which meant the Mafia boss was right to fear uniforms, which meant the storage room was already compromised, which meant she had minutes, not hours. "I'm leaving," Maya said. "Don't follow me. And think carefully about whether tonight's harassment was worth your pension." She walked out into the rain without looking back. The black sedan waiting in the parking lot, engine running, windows dark, told her everything she needed to know about how much danger she was really in. Maya climbed into her car with deliberate calm, every instinct screaming at her to run, to call for help, to walk away from the impossible situation she'd stumbled into. Instead, she started the engine and headed back toward the Harrington Grand. Because 2 hours ago, a dying man had looked at her with desperate eyes and said, "Please." Because a newborn baby was sleeping in a storage room wrapped in yellow cloth, trusting that someone would protect him. because Maya Brooks had spent 27 years learning that sometimes the right choice isn't the safe choice. It's just the choice you can live with afterward. The rain pounded against her windshield as Atlanta's lights blurred past. Behind her, the sedan followed at a careful distance. Maya tightened her grip on the wheel and drove toward whatever came next. Version 3. Conversational, intimate tone. Look, Maya Brooks wasn't trying to be a hero. She was trying to buy baby formula at 11 p.m. in a convenience store that smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams, while rain hammered the windows and her hotel uniform stuck to her skin in uncomfortable places. She was trying to forget about the man bleeding in her hotel's storage room. She was trying not to think about the newborn baby she'd left sleeping in a nest of hotel linens, tiny fists curled against his chest like he was fighting even in sleep. She was trying to be normal for just 5 damn minutes. Then the cops showed up. "Ma'am, we need to check your bag." And just like that, normal was off the table. Maya turned slowly, the wire basket of supplies still in her hand, formula, gauze, bottled water, all the things you grab when you're secretly harboring a mafia boss and his infant son instead of, living your regular life. Two officers stood between her and the exit, both wearing that expression cops get when they've already decided you're guilty and they're just going through the motions of procedure. "Why?" Maya asked, even though she knew why. She always knew why. "Reasonable suspicion of shoplifting." There it was, the phrase that meant, "You're black, you're here, that's enough." Maya looked down at her basket. "I haven't even paid yet." "Store policy, we're checking everyone." Except they weren't checking the white college kid in the back grabbing beer. They weren't checking the businessman by the magazines. Just her. Always her. "Fine." Maya handed over her tote bag because what else was she going to do? Run? Fight? That's how people died. The first officer dumped everything onto the checkout counter like he was searching for weapons-grade plutonium instead of like lip balm and old receipts. Keys, wallet, work ID, the little first aid kit she always carried because hospitality work meant dealing with everything from blisters to panic attacks. The clerk was definitely recording now. Great, she'd be a viral video by morning. Black woman harassed in store. Shocking. "You seem nervous," the second officer observed, because apparently being tired and violated wasn't enough. She also had to perform calm for them. "I'm not nervous," Maya said flatly. "I'm exhausted. There's a difference." His eyes narrowed. "What's the hurry? Why shopping this late?" "Because a man I barely know is bleeding out in my workplace and his baby needs formula," she thought. "Because I work doubles and this is when I'm free," she said instead. The first officer's hand went deeper into her bag, into the inner pocket she'd honestly forgotten about. His fingers emerged holding something small and rectangular. An ID card, but not her driver's license. Maya's heart stopped as she recognized it, the federal contractor ID she'd gotten 3 years ago. The Department of Justice clearance she never used because it made her a target, the authority she'd buried under service uniforms and double shifts. The officer went pale as he read it. Like, genuinely pale. Horror movie pale. "Oh, shit," his partner breathed, leaning in to see. Both of them looked at Maya like she'd just grown a second head. "Ma'am, we weren't, why didn't you say you were—" Maya snatched the ID back, her own shock barely contained because she'd forgotten she had it on her. She'd grabbed this bag from her locker 3 hours ago without thinking, had been so focused on the Mafia boss and the baby that she hadn't remembered the ID was still in there from the security training she'd done last month. Say I was what? Her voice was ice now. Human? Innocent until proven guilty? Someone who deserves basic respect? The store had gone completely silent. Even the muzak seemed to have stopped. We were just following procedure, the officer stammered. You were profiling, Maya corrected. And now you're terrified because the random black woman you decided to harass actually has clearance that outranks your entire department. She swept her belongings back into her bag, hands shaking with rage she couldn't quite contain. But here's the thing I need to know. Who sent you? The officers exchanged glances. A tip came in, the second one admitted. Woman matching your description, possibly aiding a fugitive. Harrington Grand Hotel. Maya's blood turned cold. They knew. Someone had already connected her to the Mafia boss. The hunters were using cops now, weaponizing badges to find their target. What fugitive? She asked carefully. Can't discuss an active investigation. But you can harass people in stores based on anonymous tips. Maya hoisted her bag onto her shoulder. I'm leaving. If you follow me, I file a formal complaint that ends both your careers. We clear? They nodded mutely. Maya paid for her supplies with shaking hands and walked out into the rain. Her car was 3 rows back. The black sedan parked across from it, engine running, windows too dark to see through, was definitely not a coincidence. She forced herself to walk normally, to unlock her door like she hadn't noticed she was being watched. But as she pulled out of the parking lot, the sedan pulled out too. Maya's hands tightened on the wheel. Okay. So she was being followed by actual criminals, and the police were compromised. And the Mafia boss was bleeding out in a storage room while armed men searched the hotel, and a 3-day-old baby was depending on her to figure this out. No pressure. She headed back toward the Harrington Grand, the sedan maintaining its careful distance behind her. Rain blurred her windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. Her phone sat in the cup holder, useless. Who was she going to call? 911? The cops were already hunting her. Maya had clocked in for a double shift 15 hours ago, thinking her biggest problem would be demanding banquet guests and aching feet. Instead, she was driving toward the most dangerous decision of her life. But here's the thing about Maya Brooks. She'd been underestimated her entire life. People saw the uniform, the service smile, the quiet competence, and assumed she was safe, harmless, easy to dismiss. They had no idea what she was capable of when someone needed her. The Harrington Grand's lights glowed through the rain ahead. Maya took a deep breath and drove toward whatever happened next, because 27 years had taught her one crucial truth. Sometimes you don't choose the fight. Sometimes the fight chooses you. And when it does, you either run or you stand. Maya Brooks was done running. 2 hours earlier. The banquet hall had been chaos for 6 straight hours. Maya's feet screamed inside her regulation black flats as she balanced another tray of champagne flutes, weaving through clusters of guests in designer gowns and tailored suits. The Harrington Grand's crystal ballroom lived up to its name. Chandeliers dripping light across marble floors, live orchestra music floating over conversations about mergers and acquisitions and summer homes in the Hamptons. She'd been on her feet since 2 that afternoon. Setup, service, tear down from the afternoon conference. Then straight into the evening gala without a real break. Her lower back ached. Her shoulders burned. The smile she wore for guests felt painted on, cracking at the edges. "Miss?" A woman in pearls snapped her fingers. "Miss, these glasses are smudged." Maya took the offending flute without comment, replaced it with a fresh one, and disappeared back toward the service corridor before the woman could find something else to complain about. The employee hallway behind the ballroom was blessedly quiet, just the muted thrum of music through walls and the distant clatter of the kitchen. Maya set down her tray and pressed her palms against her eyes, counting to 10. 6 more hours, she thought. Then home, then sleep, then do it all again tomorrow. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A text from her sister. "Grandma's asking for you. When you coming by?" Guilt twisted in Maya's stomach. She'd promised to visit 3 days ago, but between double shifts and exhaustion, she kept pushing it back. Her grandmother had raised her after their parents died, had worked 3 jobs to keep Maya fed and clothed and safe. Now she was in assisted living, and Maya could barely find time to see her. "Tomorrow," Maya texted back. "I promise." She knew her sister wouldn't believe it. Maya wasn't sure she believed it herself. The service door at the end of the hallway beckoned, the one that led to the loading dock and the small alley behind the hotel where employees went to smoke, to cry, to steal 10 minutes of air that didn't smell like other people's expensive perfume. Maya glanced back toward the ballroom. Her supervisor was occupied with a seating crisis. The other servers were deep in the weeds. She had maybe 5 minutes before anyone noticed she was gone. She pushed through the door into the October night. The rain had started an hour ago, steady and cold, turning the alley into a maze of puddles that reflected the hotel's security lights. Maya stood under the small overhang by the employee entrance, letting the sound of water on pavement drown out the noise in her head. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in an alley behind a luxury hotel at 10:30 on a Tuesday night. Crying. Not just any crying, the desperate, newborn wail of an infant. Maya's body went rigid. Her first thought was someone had abandoned a baby in the dumpsters. It happened sometimes in cities, terrible stories that made the news and broke hearts. Her second thought was to go back inside and get security. But her feet were already moving, following the sound deeper into the alley, past the dumpsters toward the dead end where the hotel's brick wall met the back of an office building. The security light barely reached this far. Shadows pooled thick and dark, broken only by the rain-slicked gleam of metal fire escapes overhead. Then Maya saw him. The Mafia boss was slumped against the brick wall, legs sprawled in front of him, one massive hand gripping something wrapped in yellow cloth. The newborn, the source of the crying that had pulled her here. But it was the Mafia boss himself who made Maya freeze mid-step. He was enormous, 6 foot something of solid muscle, barely contained by an expensive suit jacket that was torn at the shoulder. His white dress shirt was soaked through, not just from rain, but from the dark stains spreading from his left shoulder down across his chest. Blood. Fresh blood mixing with rainwater and running in thin streams across the pavement. His face was turned down toward the baby, but Maya could see the intricate tattoos that crawled up his neck, disappearing into a tight crown of braids that hung past his shoulders. More ink covered his hands, the kind of elaborate artwork that took hours and cost thousands. He looked up as Maya approached, and she saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of her, fear for the pig. "Please." His voice was rough, heavily accented, something European, maybe Italian. "Please, don't call anyone." Maya should have run. Every survival instinct she'd honed over 27 years screamed at her to go back inside, lock the door, call 911, and let professionals handle this. Instead, she knelt in the puddle beside him, her uniform soaking through instantly. "You're hurt," she said, reaching toward his shoulder before catching herself. "You need a hospital." "No." The word came out sharp, desperate. His free hand, the one not clutching the baby, shot out and gripped her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her from moving. No hospital, no police. They'll... He sucked in a breath, pain flashing across his face. "They'll take him. They'll kill us both." The baby's cries intensified, tiny fists waving from the yellow blanket. Maya could see he was so small, probably only days old, with that wrinkled, newborn face and eyes squeezed shut against the world. "Who will kill you?" Maya asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. The Mafia boss's jaw tightened. His grip on her wrist loosened, but didn't let go. "The people who did this." He gestured with his chin toward his bleeding shoulder. "The people looking for me right now." Up close, Maya could see more details. The suit jacket was custom tailored, probably worth more than her monthly rent. The watch on his wrist, a Rolex or something equally expensive, caught the security light even through the blood and rain. His hands were scarred across the knuckles, the kind of scarring that came from fighting, from violence as a way of life. And the tattoos. Now that her eyes had adjusted, she could make out symbols, words in languages she didn't recognize, and one image on his neck that made her stomach drop. A lion's head with a crown, rendered in black ink so detailed it looked almost alive. She'd seen that symbol before, on the news, in whispered conversations between hotel staff about which guests not to cross, which private parties to stay far away from. The DeLuca crime family. Oh God, Maya thought, what did I just walk into? "I can't help you," she whispered, starting to pull away. The Mafia boss's eyes locked onto hers. "Please, I'm not asking for me." He looked down at the baby, and something in his expression cracked open. Raw, desperate love mixed with terror. "He's 3 days old. His mother—" His voice broke. "She's gone. He has no one else. If they find us, they'll kill him just to erase the bloodline. Please." The baby's cries were weakening now, becoming the exhausted whimpers of an infant who'd been crying too long. Maya could see he was getting cold, his tiny lips turning bluish in the October rain. She thought about her grandmother, who'd taken in a 10-year-old orphan without hesitation. She thought about all the times someone could have looked away, could have chosen safety over compassion, and didn't. She thought about who she wanted to be when this night was over. "Okay," Maya heard herself say. "Okay, but we need to move. Now. Can you stand?" The Mafia boss nodded, though Maya could see the lie in it. He could barely keep his eyes open. She stood, grabbed his good arm, and helped him to his feet. He swayed dangerously, dead weight leaning against her as his legs nearly gave out. The baby remained clutched against his chest, protected even as the Mafia boss himself was failing. "Employee entrance," Maya said, half carrying him toward the door she'd come through. "There's a service corridor, storage rooms. We can—" She froze. Voices inside, her supervisor's voice, calling her name. Maya? Brooks, where the hell are you? I need you back on the floor. The mafia boss tensed beside her, his good hand moving toward something inside his jacket. Maya caught his wrist. Don't, she whispered. Just stay quiet. She could hear footsteps approaching the door from inside. In seconds, her supervisor would come through, would see them, would call security. Everything would be over. Maya made a choice. She pulled the mafia boss away from the employee entrance toward the loading dock entrance 20 feet away. It was rarely used at night, but Maya had propped it open once last month to help a delivery driver. The lock was broken, had been for weeks despite maintenance requests. She prayed it still was. The door handle turned under her hand. They slipped inside just as the employee entrance burst open behind them, her supervisor's voice cutting through the rain. Maya, if you're out here smoking, I swear to God. Maya eased the loading dock door shut and locked it from inside, her heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. She was in the service basement now, a maze of storage rooms, laundry facilities, and maintenance equipment that most guests never knew existed. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across concrete floors. The mafia boss was barely conscious now, his full weight sagging against her. The baby had gone quiet. Too quiet, pressed against his father's chest. Come on, Maya whispered, half dragging him down the corridor. Just a little further. She found the linen storage room, door unlocked, stacks of towels and sheets rising like walls on either side. She pulled him inside, lowered him as gently as she could onto a pile of laundry bags. His eyes fluttered open as she eased the baby from his arms. Don't. I'm just checking him, Maya said softly. She unwrapped the yellow blanket, her hands shaking. The baby was breathing, just cold and exhausted, no injuries, no blood. She wrapped him back up quickly, tucking the blanket tight. Then she turned to the mafia boss. His shoulder was worse than she'd thought. The bullet wound, because that's clearly what it was still bleeding sluggishly, the edges ragged. He'd lost a lot of blood already, was probably in shock. Maya had 2 years of pre-med under her belt before financial reality forced her to drop out. It was enough to know the mafia boss needed a hospital. It was also enough to know he'd die before he let her take him to one. I need supplies, she said, more to herself than to him. First aid kit, gauze, something to stop the bleeding. His hand caught hers one more time, his grip weak now. Thank you, he whispered. You don't know. You'll never know. Save your strength, Maya cut him off. She laid the baby beside him, watched the mafia boss's arm immediately curl around the infant, protective even in his semi-conscious state. Then she slipped back out into the corridor, her mind racing. She'd just hidden a wounded mafia boss and his newborn son in her workplace. She'd interfered with what was probably a crime scene. She'd made herself an accessory to God knew what. The rational part of her brain screamed that she'd made a terrible mistake. But the other part, the part that remembered being 10 years old and orphaned and terrified, knew she'd made the only choice she could live with. Maya Brooks took a deep breath and went to find medical supplies. The night was just beginning. Maya returned to the linen storage room 7 minutes later, arms loaded with supplies she'd stolen from 3 different locations: the employee first aid station, the housekeeping cart on the 3rd floor, and her own locker where she kept an emergency kit her grandmother had insisted she carry. Always be prepared to help, Grandma Rose used to say. You never know when someone's going to need you. Maya doubted her grandmother had imagined this scenario. The Mafia boss hadn't moved from where she'd left him, still slumped against the laundry bags with his son tucked in the crook of his good arm. His eyes were closed, face gray beneath the tattoos, breathing shallow and uneven. For a terrible moment, Maya thought she was too late. Then his eyes opened, tracking her movement as she knelt beside him. "I need to see the wound," Maya said, keeping her voice low and steady, the same tone she used with skittish hotel guests, the one that said, "I know what I'm doing, trust me," even when she absolutely didn't. The Mafia boss nodded weakly. He tried to shift forward, but couldn't manage it, pain flashing across his features. Maya helped him sit up enough to peel the ruined suit jacket off his shoulders. The white dress shirt underneath was plastered to his skin with blood and rain. She grabbed the scissors from her kit and cut through the fabric rather than trying to pull it over the wound. The bullet hole was in his left shoulder, maybe 2 inches below his collarbone. Entry wound only. She checked his back quickly and found the exit wound, which meant the bullet had gone clean through. That was good. No need to dig for fragments, but he'd lost a lot of blood. The edges of the wound were ragged, still seeping despite his body's attempts to clot. Without proper medical attention, infection was almost guaranteed. "This needs stitches," Maya said. "Real stitches. In a hospital with antibiotics and—" "No." His voice was firmer now, despite the weakness. "No hospital. I told you. They're watching emergency rooms, urgent care clinics. They have people everywhere." "Who is they?" Maya asked, pouring antiseptic onto gauze. "Who did this to you?" The Mafia boss's jaw tightened. "My family." Maya paused, meeting his eyes. "Your family shot you?" "Not all of them." He sucked in a breath as she pressed the antiseptic-soaked gauze against the wound. "Just the ones who want me dead, the ones who think they can take what's mine if they eliminate the heir." He looked down at the baby sleeping against his chest, and his expression softened despite the pain. "What's your name?" Maya asked, working quickly to clean the wound. Her hands remembered the motions from her pre-med days, assess, clean, pack, bandage. She'd practiced on training dummies and cadavers, never on a living, bleeding man with a price on his head. "Vicent," he said after a moment's hesitation, "but most people, the people in my world, they just call me the Mafia boss. Has been my name since I was 16 and earned my place." Maya's hands stilled. She'd heard whispers before. In the employee break room when certain guests checked in, the ones who got presidential suites and private security and fake names on the registry. They'd talked about the Mafia boss, a figure more legend than man, someone you didn't cross, didn't look at too long, didn't remember seeing. "The DeLuca family," she said quietly. The Mafia boss's eyes narrowed. "You know the name. Everyone knows the name." Maya resumed bandaging, wrapping the gauze tight to maintain pressure. "Hard to work hospitality in Atlanta and not know which families run what. But I don't know you, not personally." "Good." The Mafia boss winced as she tied off the bandage. "Better for you if it stays that way." "Little late for that," Maya muttered. She sat back on her heels, surveying her work. The bleeding had slowed to a seep. The bandage would hold for a few hours, maybe longer if he stayed still, which he wouldn't. She could already see him preparing to move, to run, to keep fighting whatever war had landed him bleeding in her alley. "You need rest," Maya said, "and fluids, and probably a blood transfusion, but I'm fresh out of those. I need to disappear before they find this place. The mafia boss looked down at his son again, his tattooed hand gentle against the yellow blanket. Before they find him, the baby stirred, making small noises that would escalate to crying if he woke fully. Maya reached out instinctively, adjusting the blanket to cover the infant's tiny ear, muffling the fluorescent buzz of the storage room lights. "Where's his mother?" Maya asked softly. The mafia boss's face closed off, grief and rage warring beneath the surface. Gone. 2 days after he was born, complications they said could have been prevented if— His voice cracked. If I'd been there, if I hadn't been dealing with family business, if I'd protected her better. Maya's throat tightened. She knew that guilt, the kind that lived in your chest and squeezed every time you thought about the people you couldn't save. Her parents, mangled in a car wreck while she was at a friend's house, complaining about how boring they were for making her skip a party to have family dinner the next night. Her grandmother slowly disappearing into dementia in an assisted living facility Maya could barely afford, forgetting her name a little more each visit. All the times she could have done more, been better, saved someone if she'd just been paying attention. "I'm sorry," Maya said, and meant it. The mafia boss nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Maya stood, gathering the blood-soaked gauze and ruined clothing into a plastic bag she'd tie shut and bury in the hotel's dumpster. Evidence disposal, another skill she'd never thought she'd need. "You can't stay here," she said. "My supervisor's looking for me. Someone will come down eventually to restock linens. This room isn't safe past tonight." Nowhere is safe. The mafia boss tried to stand, made it halfway up before his legs buckled. Maya caught him, her shoulder wedging under his good arm, taking his weight. He was heavier than he looked, solid muscle and dead weight. The baby pressed between them, a warm bundle that somehow made everything more surreal. "At least let me help you to somewhere more hidden," Maya said. "The mechanical room in the basement. Nobody goes there except maintenance, and they're off duty until morning." "Why are you doing this?" The mafia boss's voice was rough, confused. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. He gestured vaguely at himself, the tattoos and scars and blood. "You know what I am." Maya thought about lying, about saying something noble like, "It's the right thing to do," or "I can't let a baby die." Instead, she told him the truth. "When I was 16, I got stopped by cops outside a grocery store," Maya said, helping him toward the storage room door. "They said I matched the description of a shoplifter. I hadn't stolen anything. I had my receipt in my bag, groceries I'd bought for my grandmother." She paused at the door, listening for footsteps in the corridor. Empty. They didn't care about the receipt. They cared that I was black and young and in a neighborhood where I didn't belong. They searched my bag, made me empty my pockets in the parking lot while people watched, called my grandmother to verify I lived with her, like I was lying about my own address. Maya's jaw tightened at the memory, the humiliation, the fear. The way the officers had smiled at each other like they were playing a game and she was losing. The whole time I kept thinking, someone will help. Someone will see this is wrong and stop them. But nobody did. Everyone just walked by, pretended not to notice, chose safety over getting involved. She met the mafia boss's eyes. "I swore that night I'd never be that person, the one who walks away when someone needs help, even if helping is dangerous, even if it's stupid." She attempted a weak smile. Maybe especially if it's stupid. The mafia boss stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. The look of someone who understood making decisions that defied logic in favor of principle. You have family depending on you, he said. Your grandmother. You mentioned a sister. Walking away from me wouldn't make you like those people. It would make you smart. Maybe. Maya eased open the door, checking the corridor again. But my grandmother raised me to help people who need it. And right now, you need it. So does your son. The baby chose that moment to wake, his face scrunching as he prepared to cry. The mafia boss immediately shifted him, bouncing gently despite his own weakness, murmuring something in Italian that sounded like a lullaby. The infant settled, tiny fist curling around his father's thumb. "What's his name?" Maya asked. "Marco." The mafia boss's voice softened. "After my grandfather, the last good man in our family before everything turned rotten." "Marco," Maya repeated. She touched the baby's cheek gently, soft as anything, warm and alive, and depending on them both to keep him that way. "Okay, let's get you and Marco somewhere safer. Then I need to figure out how to get you out of this hotel without anyone noticing a bleeding mafia boss and a newborn." "Simple," the mafia boss said with dark humor. "Impossible," Maya corrected. But she was already planning, her mind racing through employee schedules and service corridors and the loading dock rotations that might give them a window. She'd started this night hoping to survive a double shift and make rent. Now she was calculating how to smuggle a crime lord and his infant son past armed hunters, corrupt police, and her own supervisor who'd fire her in a heartbeat if she found out. Maya Brooks had definitely made better life choices. But looking at baby Marco, sleeping peacefully in his father's arms, she couldn't bring herself to regret this one. Not yet, anyway. Maya had just settled the mafia boss into the mechanical room, a cramped, sweltering space filled with the hotel's water heaters and HVAC equipment, when her radio crackled to life. "All staff, we have visitors in the lobby asking questions. Be cooperative and professional, that is all." Her supervisor's voice had that tight, careful quality it got when dealing with people who made management nervous. Maya's stomach dropped. "I need to go back upstairs," she told the mafia boss, who was slumped against the wall beside a rumbling water heater Marco cradled against his chest. "My supervisor's looking for me. If I don't show up soon, she'll send someone to find me." The mafia boss nodded, his face gray with exhaustion and pain. "Go. We'll be fine." Maya wasn't sure either of them believed that, but she didn't have a choice. She climbed the service stairs back to the main floor, her uniform still damp from the rain, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. The banquet was winding down, guests filtering out through the lobby, valets scrambling to retrieve cars, the orchestra packing up their instruments. Normal. Everything looked completely normal, except for the two men standing at the concierge desk. Maya froze in the doorway between the service corridor and the lobby, partially hidden behind a potted palm. From this angle, she could see them clearly without being obvious. Both wore expensive suits, not rental tux expensive, but tailored Italian expensive. The kind of suits that cost more than Maya made in 3 months. One was tall and broad-shouldered with slicked back hair. The other was shorter, compact, with the coiled tension of a professional fighter. They weren't guests. Maya could tell from the way they stood, the way their eyes tracked every person moving through the lobby. cataloging faces and exits with predatory efficiency. The concierge, a nervous young man named Derek, was nodding repeatedly, his hands fluttering as he spoke. Maya couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read the body language. Derek was scared. Her radio crackled again. "Brooks, where are you? I need you in the lobby, now!" Maya's supervisor's voice had an edge that meant trouble. She had no choice but to step forward, smoothing her uniform and plastering on her service smile as she crossed the lobby toward the concierge desk. "You called for me?" Maya asked, directing her question to her supervisor, who'd materialized from the office with that pinched expression that meant someone important was being difficult. "These gentlemen have some questions." Her supervisor gestured to the two men. "Please cooperate fully." The taller man turned to Maya, and she felt his eyes sweep over her, assessing, categorizing, dismissing. She was just staff, just another invisible service worker. "We're looking for someone," he said. His accent was thick, definitely Italian, with an edge that made it sound less like a request and more like a threat. A man, very tall, muscular build, tattoos on his neck and hands. He may be injured. He may have an infant with him. Maya's heart hammered, but she kept her face carefully neutral. Years of dealing with difficult guests had taught her to mask reactions, to smile through insults and invasive questions. "I haven't seen anyone like that," she said evenly, "but I've been in the banquet hall most of the evening." "Was he a guest?" "No." The shorter man spoke for the first time, his voice flat and cold. "He's a fugitive, dangerous. If you see him, you call us immediately, not the police, us." He handed Maya a card, black, with only a phone number embossed in silver. No name, no company, just the number. Maya took it, forcing her hand not to shake. "Of course. Is he wanted for—" "That's not your concern." The taller man cut her off. "You see him, you call. That's all you need to know." Maya nodded, tucking the card into her apron pocket next to her notepad and pens. "I'll keep an eye out. Will you be checking with all the staff?" "We'll be checking everywhere." The shorter man's eyes were dead, shark-like, starting with employee areas. Storage rooms, maintenance corridors, places someone might hide. Maya's blood turned to ice. "I can show you around," her supervisor offered quickly, eager to please, to avoid trouble. "We want to cooperate fully with—" "No need." The taller man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We know our way around hotels. We'll start in the basement, work our way up." They moved toward the service elevator without waiting for permission, and Maya watched her supervisor's face cycle through confusion, indignation, and finally resignation. These weren't men you said no to. Maya's mind raced. The mechanical room, the Mafia boss and Marco, hidden one floor below where these hunters were headed right now. "I should get back to cleanup," Maya said, already backing toward the service corridor. "Unless you need me for anything else." Her supervisor waved her off, distracted by the situation unfolding in her lobby. Maya didn't run. Running would draw attention, but she moved fast, slipping back into the service corridor and pulling out her radio. She switched to the maintenance channel, the one housekeeping used to coordinate with engineering. "Carlos, you there?" She kept her voice low, urgent. Static, then, "Yeah, Maya, what's up?" Carlos was the night engineer, a quiet guy in his 50s who mostly kept to himself and fixed things without being asked. Maya had brought him homemade tamales once after he'd helped her move furniture in her grandmother's apartment. There are men heading to the basement. They're going to search the mechanical room. I need you to stall them, please. Just for 5 minutes. Silence on the other end. Then, this about the guy you helped earlier? Maya's breath caught. You saw? I saw you on the security feed, loading dock camera, saw you help someone inside. His voice was calm, matter of fact. Figured you had your reasons. You usually do. Maya could have cried with relief. I need 5 minutes to move him, that's all. I'll trip a breaker, Carlos said. Make them think we've got an electrical issue in the basement. Keep them busy while I investigate. But Maya, be careful. Those aren't hotel security. Those are the kind of guys who make people disappear. I know, Maya whispered. Thank you. She was already moving, taking the stairs down two at a time, her flat slapping against concrete. The mechanical room was at the end of a long corridor lined with storage cages and the hotel's industrial laundry equipment. The Mafia boss looked up as she burst through the door, instantly alert despite his exhaustion. They're here, Maya said. 2 men. They're searching the basement. We need to move, now. The Mafia boss struggled to his feet, Marco stirring against his chest. Where? I don't know yet, just not here. She helped him out into the corridor, supporting his weight as they moved away from the mechanical room toward the laundry facility. Her mind spun through options. The loading dock was too exposed. The storage cages were locked. The employee locker room. Marco woke. His cry started small, a questioning whimper that echoed off the concrete walls. Then it escalated, the full-throated wail of a hungry newborn who'd been patient too long. No, 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 Maya breathed, but the baby's cries only intensified. The Mafia boss tried to soothe him, bouncing and murmuring, but Marco was past comforting. 3 days old and traumatized, cold and hungry and done with being quiet. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor, male voices speaking rapid Italian. They'd heard. Maya made a split-second decision. She grabbed the Mafia boss's good arm and pulled him into the industrial laundry room. Massive commercial washers and dryers lined the walls, steam billowing from machines that ran 24/7 to keep up with the hotel's linen demands. In there, she pointed to the gap between two industrial dryers, barely wide enough for a person, dark and hidden behind pipes and electrical conduits. The Mafia boss squeezed into the space, his size making it almost impossible. But he managed. Marco's cries were muffled slightly by his father's chest and the roar of the machines. Maya grabbed a laundry cart and positioned it in front of the gap, then threw armfuls of dirty linens on top, creating a barrier that looked natural, unplanned. The door to the laundry room swung open. Maya turned, surprised on her face, a towel in her hands like she'd been in the middle of sorting. The 2 men stood in the doorway, their suits incongruous against the industrial backdrop. The taller one's eyes swept the room, cataloging every detail. This area is for employees only, Maya said, channeling every ounce of authority she could muster. Can I help you with something? We heard crying, the shorter man said. A baby. Maya's mind raced. Behind her, Marco's wails continued, barely muffled by the dryer noise and his father's desperate attempts to quiet him. Baby? Maya frowned, cocking her head like she was listening. I don't hear anything, just the machines. They make all kinds of weird noises, pipes, steam vents. You get used to it. The taller man stepped further into the room, moving toward the dryers, toward the cart. toward the gap where the Mafia boss and Marco were hidden. Maya stepped into his path, not aggressive, but present. Sir, I really need to ask you to leave. This is a restricted area. Laundry chemicals, industrial equipment, insurance liability. If my supervisor finds out I let guests back here, we're not guests. The shorter man moved to flank her, and Maya suddenly understood how trapped animals felt. And we don't care about your rules. His hand moved to his jacket, and Maya saw the outline of something solid underneath. A gun. Of course they had guns. The lights flickered, once, twice, then the entire basement plunged into darkness. Carlos had come through. Maya heard cursing in Italian, the shuffle of feet, the distinctive click of a weapon being drawn. Don't move, the taller man's voice cut through the darkness. Nobody moves until the lights come back. But Maya was already moving, her eyes adjusting faster because she knew this space, had worked in this basement for 3 years. She knew where every machine sat, where the pipes ran, where the emergency exits were located. She grabbed the laundry cart and shoved it hard to her left, sending it crashing into where she thought the shorter man was standing. His grunt of pain confirmed she'd guessed right. Go! She hissed toward the gap between the dryers. Back door, turn left, stairs to the loading dock. She heard the Mafia boss moving, his breathing labored, Marco's cries now working in their favor, making it harder for the hunters to pinpoint sounds in the darkness. The emergency lights kicked on, dim red LEDs that turned everything into shadows and blood. Maya ran, not toward the exit, but deeper into the laundry facility, drawing the hunters away from the Mafia boss and Marco. Her shoes slapped against wet concrete as she wove between machines, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Stop her! One of the men shouted. Footsteps pounded behind her. Maya grabbed a rolling rack of clean linens and yanked it into the aisle behind her. It crashed down with a sound like thunder, sheets and towels exploding across the floor. She heard cursing, the stumble of someone tripping. The far exit glowed red in the emergency lighting. Maya hit the door at full speed, slamming through into the stairwell beyond. She took the stairs up, not down, away from where the Mafia boss would be fleeing, leading the hunters in the wrong direction. Her radio crackled. Maya, what the hell is happening down there? I'm getting reports of a disturbance. She didn't answer. Couldn't answer without giving away her position. 2 flights up, she burst through another door into a service corridor she knew well, the one that connected to the employee break room and the time clock and the back offices where managers pretended not to notice staff taking extra breaks. Maya slowed to a walk, forcing her breathing to calm, smoothing her uniform. Just another employee, just another worker finishing her shift. She clocked out at the terminal like nothing had happened, nodded to the security guard monitoring the employee exit, and walked out into the rain. Her car was 3 rows back in the employee lot. She climbed in with shaking hands, locked the doors, and sat in the darkness trying to process what had just happened. She'd assaulted guests, or whatever those men were. She'd caused property damage. She'd helped a fugitive escape. She'd made herself a target. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Maya stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Thank you. The Mafia boss's voice was rough with exhaustion and pain, but alive. Alive. We made it out. We're safe, for now. Where are you? Maya asked. Better you don't know. A pause. But I won't forget this. What you did, what you risked. Just keep Marco safe, Maya said. I will, I promise. The line went dead. Maya sat in her car in the rain, her whole body shaking with delayed shock, and realized her life had just changed forever. The hunters knew someone had helped. They'd seen her face. And they would come looking. Maya didn't go home. She drove in circles for 20 minutes, checking her rearview mirror obsessively, taking random turns through neighborhoods she didn't know, making sure no one was following her. The rain had intensified, turning Atlanta's streets into rivers of reflected light. Brake lights bleeding red across her windshield, street lamps creating halos in the downpour. Her phone rang, the same unknown number. "Where are you?" the Mafia boss asked without preamble. His voice was strained, breathing labored. "Driving, making sure I wasn't followed." Maya switched lanes, checked the mirror again. "Where are you?" "Alley behind a closed restaurant, 4 blocks from the hotel. I can't—" He sucked in a sharp breath. "I can't walk much further." The bleeding started again. Maya's hands tightened on the wheel. She'd patched him up as best she could, but field medicine only went so far. Without proper care, infection would set in. He could die. Marco could end up an orphan. "Send me your location," Maya said, already turning at the next light. "I'll come get you." "You should go home. Forget you ever saw us." "Yeah, well, I'm bad at following advice." Maya's GPS pinged with his location. "Stay hidden. I'll be there in 5 minutes." She found the alley easily enough, a narrow passage between a defunct Italian restaurant and a pawn shop, both closed for the night. The Mafia boss was slumped behind a dumpster. Marco clutched against his chest beneath the ruins of his suit jacket. Both were soaked through, the baby's yellow blanket plastered to his tiny body. Maya parked at the alley's entrance, engine running, and jumped out into the rain. "Can you walk?" she asked, already pulling the Mafia boss to his feet. "I can crawl if I have to." His jaw was set with determination, but his legs shook with the effort of standing. Maya got him to the car, helped him into the back seat where he could lie down with Marco. The baby was eerily quiet now, too cold and exhausted to cry. That scared Maya more than the wailing had. "We need to get him warm," she said, cranking the heat as high as it would go. "And you need actual medical attention. There's an urgent care on—" "No." The Mafia boss's voice was firm despite his weakness. "They'll be watching medical facilities, I told you." "Then what?" Maya pulled out of the alley, heading nowhere in particular. "You bleed out in my back seat? Marco dies of exposure? There has to be somewhere." "My safe house." The Mafia boss shifted, pain flashing across his face. "North of the city. 40 minutes if you take back roads. There are supplies there. Medical equipment, everything we need." Maya glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You trust me enough to show me where you live?" "I trust you enough to know you've already risked everything." His eyes met hers in the reflection. "What's a little more?" Maya turned onto a side street, heading toward the northern suburbs. The safe house wasn't a house at all. It was a storage unit complex converted into low-rent apartments, the kind of place that didn't ask questions as long as the money was good. She was 10 minutes into the drive when she noticed the headlights behind her. Black SUV, tinted windows, staying exactly 3 car lengths back. "We're being followed," Maya said quietly. The Mafia boss struggled to sit up, looking through the rear window. His face went pale. "They found us." "How? I was careful." "They must have tagged my phone before I threw it away, or they're tracking something else I'm carrying." He patted his pockets, checking. Doesn't matter how, they're here. Maya's heart hammered. She accelerated, taking a sharp right at the next intersection. The SUV followed, maintaining its distance. What do I do? Her voice came out higher than she intended. Drive. The Mafia boss was checking his jacket, pulling items from pockets and tossing them to the floor, a money clip, cufflinks, a lighter. Don't stop, don't pull over, they can't do anything while you're moving. They have guns. So do I. He pulled a pistol from inside his jacket, checked the magazine with practiced efficiency despite his injury. But I'd rather not use it with Marco in the car. Maya took another turn, then another, weaving through residential streets. The SUV stayed with them, relentless. Marco started crying again, a weak, exhausted sound that tore at Maya's heart. He needs to eat, the Mafia boss said, his voice cracking. He needs warmth and food and somewhere safe to sleep. He's 3 days old and he's been through more trauma than any child should. His voice broke completely. Maya risked a glance in the rearview mirror and saw tears streaming down the Mafia boss's face, mixing with rain and blood. One hand clutched his son, the other gripped the pistol like a lifeline. Tell me the truth, Maya said. All of it. Who are you really? Why do they want you dead badly enough to follow us through Atlanta in the middle of the night? The Mafia boss was quiet for so long, Maya thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my father is Giovanni DeLuca. He founded the DeLuca crime syndicate 40 years ago. Built an empire on blood and fear and money. I was born into that empire, groomed to take over, to be the next Mafia boss. He looked down at Marco, his expression softening despite the pain. I never wanted it. The violence, the corruption, the endless cycle of revenge and paranoia. I tried to leave, tried to build something different with Marco's mother, something clean, legitimate. We were going to disappear after he was born, start over somewhere they couldn't find us. What happened? Maya asked, though she already knew the answer would hurt. Complications during delivery. She hemorrhaged. I got her to the hospital, but his voice roughened. By the time they stopped the bleeding, she'd been without oxygen too long. Brain damage. She lasted 2 days on life support before I had to make the decision to... He couldn't finish. I'm sorry, Maya whispered. My uncle found out about the baby while I was at the hospital. He saw his chance. If I die, if Marco dies, the succession passes to him, the entire empire, billions of dollars and unlimited power. All he has to do is eliminate 2 people. The Mafia boss shifted Marco to his shoulder, supporting the infant's head with his good hand. So he ambushed me outside Marco's mother's funeral, shot me in front of her grave like I was nothing. Like 3 generations of loyalty meant nothing compared to what he could take. Maya took another turn, the SUV still following. Her mind raced, trying to find a solution, a way out. The men at the hotel, they're your uncle's people? Some of them. Others are just mercenaries, hired guns who'll kill anyone for the right price. The Mafia boss checked the rear window again. They won't stop. Even if I give them what they want, even if I hand over my claim to the empire, they'll kill Marco just to be sure. A 3-day-old baby is a threat to them. That's insane. That's my family. His voice was bitter. That's the world I was born into and tried to escape. The SUV accelerated, closing the distance. Maya's hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. What do I do? I can't outrun them. I don't know how to... I'm a waitress, not a... Pull into the parking garage, the Mafia boss interrupted, pointing. There. The public garage for the shopping complex, multiple exits, crowded even at night. They won't risk shooting in front of witnesses. Maya swerved into the garage entrance, tires squealing on wet pavement. The SUV followed, close enough now that she could see three silhouettes inside. Three armed men hunting them through a parking garage. Top level, the Mafia boss directed. Then we switch vehicles. There's always someone who leaves their keys in the ignition. People are careless. You want me to steal a car? I want you and Marco to live through the night. His eyes met hers in the mirror, fierce and desperate. Please, I'm begging you, not for me, for him. He's innocent. He deserves a chance. Maya thought about walking away, about pulling over, letting the Mafia boss and Marco out, driving home and pretending none of this ever happened. But she looked at Marco, tiny, helpless, crying weakly in his father's arms, and she knew she couldn't. She'd made her choice 2 hours ago in a rain-soaked alley. She'd tied her fate to theirs the moment she knelt beside a bleeding stranger and said, "Okay." "Hold on," Maya said, and pressed the accelerator. The car shot up the parking garage ramps, tires screeching on concrete. The SUV stayed close, close enough that Maya could hear the roar of its engine echoing off the walls. They burst onto the top level, mostly empty, open to the sky, rain pouring down through gaps in the structure. Maya whipped around concrete pillars, searching for... There, a beat-up Honda with a parking tag that said employee, someone who worked in the complex and probably left keys hidden. Maya slammed the brakes, threw the car into park. "Get out, now!" The Mafia boss struggled with the door, his injury making every movement agony. Maya ran around, helped him out, took Marco from his arms while he steadied himself. The baby felt impossibly light, impossibly fragile. He'd stopped crying, his eyes closed, his breathing too shallow. "Check the wheel well," the Mafia boss gasped, leaning against the Honda. "People hide spare keys." The SUV exploded onto the top level, tires screaming. Maya dropped to her knees, ran her hand along the Honda's wheel well. Her fingers found something magnetic, a key holder. "Got it!" She ripped it free, fumbled with the tiny box, pulled out keys just as the SUV screeched to a stop 30 feet away. Doors opened. Men emerged, guns drawn. "Get in!" the Mafia boss roared, yanking the Honda's door open. Maya dove into the driver's seat. Marco clutched to her chest with one arm. The Mafia boss threw himself into the passenger seat, his gun coming up. Gunshots cracked across the parking garage. Maya's windshield spiderwebbed. She jammed the key into the ignition, turned it, praying the engine would start. It coughed. Died. "Come on, come on!" Another gunshot. The rear window exploded, showering them with glass. Marco shrieked. Maya turned the key again, pumping the gas. The engine caught. She threw the Honda into reverse, stomped the accelerator. The car shot backward, tires smoking. The men scattered. Maya spun the wheel, executing a J-turn that would have impressed her driver's ed teacher if it hadn't been born from pure terror. The car whipped around, facing the exit ramp. She floored it. The Honda careened down the ramp levels, suspension screaming, the Mafia boss bracing himself against the dashboard with his good hand, Marco wailing in Maya's lap because she didn't have time to secure him properly, didn't have time for anything except driving and praying they'd survive the next 60 seconds. They burst out of the garage onto street level, tires smoking, and merged into traffic like they belonged there. Behind them, the SUV was stuck 3 levels up, blocked by a delivery truck unloading supplies. Maya drove. She drove until her hands stopped shaking. She drove until the city lights faded into suburban darkness. She drove until the Mafia boss's breathing steadied and Marco's cries quieted into exhausted whimpers. "You okay?" she finally asked. The Mafia boss laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound. "I was shot, hunted through a hotel, chased through a parking garage, and nearly killed in front of my infant son. But yeah, I'm okay. Thanks to you." "Don't thank me yet," Maya said. "We still have 40 minutes to your safe house, and they know what car we're driving now. Then we ditch it, steal another one." "You're really bad at life choices," Maya muttered. Says the woman who helped a stranger instead of calling the cops. Fair point. They drove in silence for a while, rain drumming on the Honda's roof, Marco finally sleeping against Maya's chest. "Why Marco?" Maya asked suddenly. "You said he was named after your grandfather." The Mafia boss's expression softened. "My grandfather was the only one who tried to get me out, who saw what the family was becoming and wanted better for me. They killed him for it. Called it a heart attack, but I knew. I was 12 years old and I knew." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, just keep driving. Keep him safe, that's all that matters now." Maya looked down at the sleeping infant in her lap, at his tiny fingers curled into fists, at the way he breathed in small, trusting sighs. She'd started tonight hoping to make rent and survive a double shift. Now she was a fugitive, a car thief, an accessory to God knew how many crimes. But looking at Marco, feeling his weight warm and alive against her chest, she couldn't bring herself to regret any of it. "Okay," Maya said quietly. "Okay, let's get you both somewhere safe." The Mafia boss reached over with his good hand, squeezed her shoulder briefly. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." Maya just drove. Present moment. The convenience store. Maya stood frozen as the first officer held her ID between two trembling fingers, his face draining of color like someone had opened a valve and let all the blood rush out. His partner leaned in, squinted at the card, then stepped back so fast he bumped into the checkout counter. "Oh shit," he breathed. The ID was small, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what they were looking at. Federal Contractor Credentials, Department of Justice, Security Clearance Level, TSSCI, Top Secret, Sensitive Compartmented Information. The kind of clearance that meant Maya had access to information and operations most people didn't know existed. The kind that outranked not just beat cops, but their captain, their chief, probably half the city's administration. The kind that made two officers who just illegally searched her bag without cause realize they'd stepped into career-ending territory. Maya had gotten the position 3 years ago, back when she'd still been taking night classes and trying to claw her way out of service work. A friend from her pre-med days had recruited her, said the DOJ needed people with medical training who could pass extensive background checks and keep their mouths shut. People to work with witness protection, to assist with high-value target extractions, to provide medical consultation on cases involving biological evidence. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even full-time. But it paid well enough to cover her grandmother's assisted living facility, and it gave Maya something her waitressing jobs never could. The feeling that she was making a difference, using her training for something that mattered. She'd kept it quiet, partly because the work required discretion, partly because being a black woman with federal authority made her a target from men who felt threatened, from communities who saw her as a sellout, from everyone who thought she should stay in her lane. It was easier to be invisible, safer to let people see the uniform and the service smile and nothing else. Until tonight, when invisibility stopped being an option. Ma'am, the first officer's voice cracked. He tried again. I didn't know. We weren't told. I apologize for. You apologize? Maya's voice came out quiet, deadly. She snatched the ID from his hand, feeling 3 years of buried rage crystallizing into something cold and sharp. You apologize for what exactly? For profiling me? For assuming I was a criminal based on my skin color? For violating my Fourth Amendment rights in a public store? The second officer held up his hands in a placating gesture. Ma'am, we were following procedure? Procedure? Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. What procedure allows you to search someone who hasn't committed a crime, who hasn't even finished shopping? What procedure lets you dump a woman's belongings across a counter and paw through them like she's already guilty? Around them, the store had gone completely silent. Every customer, every employee, every person within earshot was watching. Phones were definitely recording now. This would be on social media within minutes. Good, Maya thought viciously. Let them see. We received a tip, the first officer stammered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the store's air conditioning. A woman matching your description, possibly involved in a tip. Maya stepped closer and the officer actually backed up. A tip that a black woman in a hotel uniform was suspicious. A tip specific enough to bring you here to this store at this exact time. That's not procedure. That's a targeted operation. She swept her belongings back into her tote, wallet, keys, the first aid kit they'd scattered across the counter. Her hands shook with adrenaline and fury, but her voice stayed steady. So, here's what's going to happen, Maya continued, shouldering her bag. I'm going to leave. You're going to stay here and think very carefully about how you explain this to your supervisor when I file my complaint. Because I will file it. And my complaint carries weight, yours doesn't. The second officer found his voice. Ma'am, please, if we could just... Just what? Maya cut him off. Explain yourselves, justify racial profiling, tell me how you were just doing your job while violating my rights. She held up her ID, made sure they both got a good look at the clearance level. I work with federal prosecutors. I consult on cases involving civil rights violations. I've sat in rooms with people who decide whether officers like you keep their badges or lose everything. She tucked the ID back into her bag. So, think very carefully about what happens next. The first officer looked like he might be sick. We didn't mean, you never do. Maya grabbed her basket of supplies, the formula and gauze and bottled water that the Mafia boss and Marco desperately needed. But you still did it. You still stopped me, searched me, humiliated me. Because in your minds, I fit a profile. I looked suspicious. She moved toward the register, and both officers stepped aside like she might burn them if they got too close. The clerk rang up her items with shaking hands, not making eye contact. Maya paid cash, took her bags, and turned back to the officers one last time. Who gave you the tip? She asked, her voice dropping to something dangerous. Who told you to look for me specifically? The officers exchanged glances. The second one's jaw worked like he was weighing whether to answer. Anonymous call, he finally said. Came in about 45 minutes ago. Woman matching your description, leaving the Harrington Grand Hotel with suspicious items, acting nervous, possibly aiding a wanted individual. Maya's blood turned cold. 45 minutes ago, she'd still been at the hotel. Before the chase through the parking garage, before the escape in the stolen Honda, before she'd left the Mafia boss and Marco at the safe house and driven back into the city for supplies. Someone had called the police about her before any of that happened, which meant someone at the hotel had identified her, had connected her to the Mafia boss's escape, had weaponized law enforcement to find her. What wanted individual? Maya asked, keeping her voice neutral despite the fear clawing up her throat. Can't discuss an ongoing investigation. The first officer had recovered some of his professional demeanor, hiding behind official language. But you can harass civilians based on anonymous tips. Maya shook her head. Interesting priorities. She headed toward the exit, then paused with her hand on the door. The person who called you, did they say why I was supposedly helping this wanted individual? Did they give you a reason why a federal contractor would risk her career and freedom? The second officer shifted uncomfortably. They said, they said you might be compromised, possibly coerced or blackmailed. Coerced. Maya's laugh was sharp. Right, because a black woman couldn't possibly make her own decisions, couldn't possibly help someone because she chose to. Had to be forced, manipulated, controlled. Ma'am, that's not what I... Save it! Maya pushed through the door into the rain. You've done enough! The automatic doors closed behind her, muffling the officers' voices as they argued in frantic whispers about damage control and incident reports and how badly they just screwed up their careers. Maya walked to her car, not the stolen Honda, which she'd ditched 3 blocks from the safe house, but her own vehicle that she'd retrieved from the hotel employee lot using back streets and paranoia. She loaded the supplies into the passenger seat, climbed behind the wheel, and sat in the darkness trying to process what had just happened. They knew. The hunters knew she'd helped the Mafia boss. They'd identified her, tracked her movements, and called the police to intercept her, which meant they were using every resource at their disposal: law enforcement, surveillance, street networks. The DeLuca family's reach was broader and deeper than she'd imagined. Maya's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She looked at the supplies in the passenger seat. Formula for Marco, medical supplies for the Mafia boss, bottled water, and basic necessities, because a 3-day-old baby and his bleeding father needed someone to think practically even when the world was falling apart around them. She could still walk away, could dump the supplies, go home, claim coercion if anyone asked questions. Her federal credentials would protect her. She had resources, connections, ways to insulate herself from the fallout. But Marco would starve. The Mafia boss would die of infection, and Maya would spend the rest of her life knowing she'd abandoned them to save herself. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but she knew who it was. "Did you get the supplies?" the Mafia boss asked without preamble. His voice was rough, exhausted, but alert. "I got them, but we have a problem." "Another one?" Dark humor edged his words. "The cops were waiting for me at the store. Someone called in a tip about me specifically. They know I helped you." Silence on the other end. Then, "You need to disappear. Tonight. I can give you money, new identity, transport." "I'm not running." Maya started the engine. "I'm coming back to the safe house. Marco needs this formula, and you need antibiotics before that wound gets infected." "Maya." The Mafia boss's voice cracked on her name. "They'll come after you. My uncle doesn't leave loose ends. If he knows you helped me, he'll—" "I know." Maya pulled out of the parking lot, checking her mirrors obsessively. No black SUVs. No cops. Not yet. But I didn't go through everything tonight just to quit now. Marco needs me. You need me, so I'm coming back. You're insane. Yeah, well, that seems to be tonight's theme. Maya turned onto the highway, heading north. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Have coffee ready. It's been a really long night. She hung up before the Mafia boss could argue. The rain pounded against her windshield as she drove, and Maya thought about choices, the ones that made sense and the ones that didn't, the ones that kept you safe and the ones that let you sleep at night, knowing you'd done the right thing even when it was stupid. Her federal ID sat in her bag, proof of the authority and credentials she'd worked so hard to earn. But tonight, in a convenience store at midnight, it had been nothing but a shield, a way to reclaim dignity after it was stripped away, a reminder that she was more than what those officers assumed when they looked at her. And tomorrow, assuming she survived to see tomorrow, she'd figure out what came next. But tonight, she had a mafia boss to keep alive and a baby to feed. Everything else could wait. Maya pressed harder on the accelerator and drove toward the safe house, toward danger, toward a decision she'd already made the moment she knelt beside a bleeding stranger in a rain-soaked alley and said, "Okay." Some choices you made with your head, others you made with your heart. Tonight, Maya's heart was winning. Maya sat in her car outside the convenience store, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles had gone white. Through the rain-streaked windshield, she could see the two officers still inside, their body language radiating panic as they gestured animatedly to each other. She should leave, should drive back to the safe house, get the supplies to the mafia boss and Marco, and figure out her next move. But something didn't add up. Anonymous tip, woman matching her description, possibly aiding a wanted individual. Too specific, too targeted. Maya killed the engine, grabbed her ID from her bag, and walked back into the store. The officers looked up as she entered, their expressions cycling from relief to dread in the span of a heartbeat. "Ma'am, we thought you'd left," the first officer started. "I want the full story." Maya's voice was steel. Not the official version, not the sanitized explanation you'll put in your report. The truth. Who called you? What exactly were you told? And why were you really here? The second officer glanced at his partner, then back at Maya. "Ma'am, we already explained. You gave me the bare minimum." Maya held up her ID, let them see the clearance level again. "But I'm not some civilian you can placate with half-truths. I work federal investigations. I know when I'm being fed a cover story, so try again. And this time, tell me everything." The first officer's shoulders sagged. He looked around the store. The clerk pretending not to listen, the handful of customers who'd resumed shopping but were definitely eavesdropping. "Can we talk outside?" he asked quietly. Maya followed them out into the rain, standing under the store's awning while water poured off the edges in sheets. "The call came in from a blocked number," the first officer said, his voice low. "Dispatch patched it through to us because we were already in the area. Female voice, very calm, very specific. She said a black woman, late 20s, hotel uniform from the Harrington Grand, would be shopping at this location within the next hour." "She?" Maya interrupted. "The caller was a woman?" "Yeah, professional sounding, like she was reading from notes." The officer rubbed his face. "She said you were potentially aiding a dangerous organized crime figure. A mafia boss named," he checked his notepad, "Vicente DeLuca. Said he was traveling with an infant, possibly his son. Said you'd been seen helping him escape from the hotel earlier tonight. Maya's heart hammered, but she kept her face neutral. And you believed an anonymous caller? Didn't verify the information? Didn't question why someone would call you specifically instead of going through proper channels? The second officer shifted uncomfortably. The caller said she was with hotel security, said she'd reviewed surveillance footage, but couldn't file an official report because DeLuca's family had people inside the police department. Said if she went through normal channels, the information would be buried. So she called two random patrol officers instead. Maya's voice dripped skepticism. That makes sense to you? She knew our names, the first officer said quietly. She asked for us specifically, said we were trustworthy, said we'd want to know that someone with federal credentials was potentially being coerced into helping a criminal. Ice slid down Maya's spine. She knew about my clearance? Both officers nodded. She said you were vulnerable, the second officer continued. Said DeLuca might be using your family against you, your grandmother in the assisted living facility, your sister in Marietta. She said we needed to check on you, make sure you weren't being forced into something dangerous. Maya's blood turned cold. They knew about Grandma Rose, about her sister, about the federal credentials she kept hidden. These weren't random hunters making educated guesses. This was detailed intelligence, the kind that came from deep surveillance or inside information. What did she sound like? Maya asked. The caller, young, old, any accent? Older, the first officer said. 50s, maybe 60s, slight accent. Italian, I think. Refined, like someone used to giving orders. Maya's mind raced. A woman, not a man. Someone with authority in the DeLuca organization. Someone who knew how to manipulate law enforcement, who understood which buttons to push to get police involved without raising red flags. Did she say anything else? Maya pressed. Anything about where DeLuca might be headed? What his plans were? The officers exchanged glances again. She said he'd try to leave the city tonight, the second officer admitted. Said he had a safe house somewhere north, but he'd need supplies first. Medical supplies, baby formula, basic necessities. She said if we wanted to find him, we should watch for you. Said you'd lead us right to him. There it was, the real reason they'd stopped her. Maya wasn't the target. She was the bait. The hunters knew she'd go back, knew she couldn't abandon the Mafia boss and Marco, so they'd put eyes on her, used police as unwitting surveillance, and waited for her to reveal the safe house location. Are you tracking me? Maya asked sharply. Did you put a device on my car, my bag, anything? No. The first officer looked genuinely offended. We don't do that. We stopped you, we searched you, but that's it. We're patrol officers, not detectives. We don't have the equipment for. But they do. Maya looked past the officers, scanning the parking lot. Multiple vehicles, any of which could contain watchers. The people who called you, they have the resources, and they're probably out there right now, watching to see what I do next. She pulled out her phone, opened the map application, and studied the area. Multiple routes north, dozens of possible safe house locations. If they were watching her, they'd follow. And she'd lead them straight to the Mafia boss and Marco. Unless she didn't. I need you to do something for me, Maya said, her mind already calculating. And in exchange, I won't file that complaint. Yet. The officers leaned in, desperate for any lifeline. I need a distraction. A reason for me to go somewhere that isn't where I'm actually going. She met their eyes. Can you do that? What kind of distraction? The first officer asked warily. Call in a welfare check, my grandmother's facility. Say you received a report that someone was asking about her, acting suspicious. Say you need me to come verify everything's okay. That's that's filing a false report, the second officer protested. Is it? Maya's voice was ice. You did receive a report. Someone is asking about my grandmother, someone dangerous. So technically, it's a legitimate welfare check, and it gives me an excuse to drive east toward Marietta instead of north toward where they think I'm going. The officers wavered. Do this, Maya said, and I'll forget tonight ever happened. Don't do it. And I'll make sure every detail of this stop, including how you violated my rights based on an anonymous tip from a potential organized crime figure, ends up in a federal complaint by morning. The first officer pulled out his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. We need a welfare check called into Sunrise Meadows Assisted Living, resident Rose Brooks. Report of suspicious activity. Request local units respond and contact family for verification. Static then. Copy that, Unit 47. Dispatching now. The officer looked at Maya. That buys you maybe 30 minutes. After that, they'll realize you're not coming. 30 minutes is enough. Maya was already walking back to her car. Thank you. And for what it's worth, next time someone calls with a tip like that, question it, verify it. Don't just assume the black woman is the criminal. She drove out of the parking lot, heading east on the highway toward Marietta, checking her mirrors obsessively. 2 cars pulled out behind her, a sedan and a pickup truck. Could be innocent. Could be hunters. Maya took 3 random exits, doubled back, took surface streets through residential neighborhoods. The sedan stayed with her for 2 exits, then peeled off. The pickup disappeared after the first doubling back. But there, a dark gray SUV, different from the black one from earlier, maintaining a careful distance. Maya's jaw tightened. They were good, professional, patient. She led them in circles for 20 minutes, heading generally east toward Marietta, playing the role of concerned granddaughter, responding to a welfare check. The SUV followed, never getting close enough to be obvious, never falling far enough back to lose her. Finally, Maya pulled into a 24-hour diner. Bright lights, crowded parking lot, multiple witnesses. She went inside, ordered coffee she didn't want, and sat at a window booth where she could watch her car. The gray SUV parked 3 rows back. No one got out. Maya pulled out her phone and called the number the Mafia boss had given her. Are you okay? He answered immediately, voice tight with worry. I'm fine, but we have a problem, multiple problems. She kept her voice low, watching the SUV. They're tracking me. Using police, using their own people. They know I'm helping you, and they're waiting for me to lead them to you. The Mafia boss cursed in Italian. Don't come back. It's too dangerous. Marco needs formula. You need antibiotics. I'm not abandoning you. Maya checked the time. But I need to lose them first. Give me an hour, maybe 2. Maya, I've got this. She didn't. But what choice did they have? Just keep Marco safe. I'll get there. She hung up and sat in the booth, sipping bitter coffee and watching the SUV watch her. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We know where you're going. We know who you're helping. This doesn't end well for you. Maya's hands shook as she deleted the message. Another buzz, another text, different number. Walk away now. Last chance. She blocked the number, turned off her phone, and stood up. Time to run. But first, she needed to make sure they couldn't follow. Maya walked out of the diner, got in her car, and drove straight to the police station 3 blocks away. She parked in the visitor lot, directly under security cameras, grabbed her federal ID, and walked inside like she belonged there. The desk sergeant looked up, surprised. "Can I help you?" "I need to report being followed." Maya showed her ID. "Federal contractor. Someone's been tailing me for the past hour. Gray SUV, plate number—" She rattled off the numbers she'd memorized, potentially connected to organized crime. The sergeant's eyes widened at the clearance level on her ID. "We'll send a unit to check it out. Do you need protection?" "No, I just need it on record." Maya smiled tightly. "In case something happens to me. Evidence trail." She filed the report, gave her statement, and walked back to her car. The gray SUV was gone. Spooked by the police station location, by the official report, by the sudden exposure. But Maya knew they'd be back. They'd find another way to track her, another angle to exploit. She had maybe 2 hours before they regrouped. 2 hours to get supplies to the Mafia boss and Marco. 2 hours to figure out how to protect them from a family that had unlimited resources and zero mercy. Maya started her car, checked her mirrors one last time, and drove north into the rain, toward the safe house, toward danger, toward whatever came next, because she'd made her choice, and there was no going back now. Maya made it to the safe house 40 minutes later, the stolen Honda coughing and sputtering as she pulled into the industrial complex. The building was exactly what the Mafia boss had described: a converted storage facility with minimal lighting, no security cameras, and the kind of anonymity that came from being surrounded by abandoned warehouses and neglected lots. She grabbed the supplies and ran to Unit 47, knocking the pattern he'd told her. 3 quick, 2 slow, 1 quick. The door opened immediately. The Mafia boss looked worse than when she'd left him. His face was gray, eyes glassy with fever, the makeshift bandage she'd applied now soaked through with fresh blood. But he was standing, and Marco was in his arms, wrapped in the yellow blanket and blessedly quiet. "You shouldn't have come back," the Mafia boss said, but his voice cracked with relief as he took the supplies. "Yeah, well, I'm bad at self-preservation." Maya pushed past him into the safe house, a bare-bones efficiency apartment with a mattress on the floor, a mini fridge, and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. "How's Marco?" "Hungry, cold, scared." The Mafia boss was already mixing formula with shaking hands. "Like his father." Maya helped him feed the baby, watching Marco's tiny mouth work at the bottle with desperate determination. The infant's color was better than it had been in the car, but he was still too pale, too fragile. "You need to rest," Maya told the Mafia boss once Marco had drunk his fill and fallen asleep. "Let me clean that wound properly. You're burning up with fever." No time. The Mafia boss was gathering items, a go bag stuffed with cash and documents, a spare weapon, a burner phone. "We need to move. Tonight. They'll figure out where this place is eventually." "You can barely stand," Maya protested. "I'll crawl if I have to." His jaw was set with stubborn determination. "I won't let them corner us. Won't let Marco." His phone buzzed. The burner he'd been using. He checked it, and his face went white. "What?" Maya asked. He turned the phone toward her. A photo on the screen. Maya's car in the hotel employee parking lot. Timestamp, 20 minutes ago. Her blood turned to ice. "I didn't go back to the hotel. I came straight here from the police station." Someone moved your car. The mafia boss was already packing faster. Or this photo is old. Either way, they're sending a message. They know where you work, where you've been, where you might go. Another text came through. A video this time. Maya's hands shook as she pressed play. The footage showed the hotel's loading dock, the same one she'd used to sneak the mafia boss inside hours ago. A figure stood in frame, looking directly at the camera. Carlos, the night engineer who'd helped her, who'd tripped the breaker to give them time to escape. "I'm sorry, Maya." Carlos's voice was barely audible over the video's tinny speaker. "They have my daughter. They said if I didn't tell them where you might hide him, they'd... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The video cut off. "Oh, God," Maya breathed. "Carlos, they threatened his daughter. They'll threaten everyone you know." The mafia boss hoisted the go bag over his good shoulder, wincing at the pain. "Your sister, your grandmother, every friend, every coworker, that's how they work. They find leverage and they use it." He grabbed Maya's arm with surprising strength. "You need to disappear. Tonight. I'll give you everything you need. Money, new identity, transport. But you can't go back. Not to your apartment, not to your job, not to anyone you know." "What about you?" Maya asked. "What about Marco?" "We'll manage." But his legs were already shaking, his breathing labored. He could barely hold Marco and the go bag at the same time. "You can't even walk to the car," Maya said flatly. "You need help. Marco needs help. So stop being noble and let me..." Headlights swept across the safe house windows. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. "Go!" The mafia boss shoved Maya toward the back door. "Fire escape. It leads to the alley behind." The front door exploded inward, torn from its hinges by a battering ram. Men poured in, 4, 5, 6 of them, all armed, all wearing tactical gear that made them look more like military operators than mob enforcers. The mafia boss's gun came up, but Maya grabbed his arm. "There's too many. You'll just get us killed." "The baby," the mafia boss gasped. "Take Marco! Run! Please!" "Nobody's running." The woman's voice came from the doorway, cultured and cold. An older woman stepped through the wreckage of the door. 50s or early 60s, expensively dressed with iron gray hair pulled into a severe bun. Her eyes swept over the scene with the calculation of someone used to getting exactly what she wanted. "Aunt Marcella," the mafia boss said, his voice hollow with betrayal. "Nephew." She smiled, but it was the smile of a predator. "You've led us on quite a chase. But it's over now. Give me the baby, and I'll make your death quick. Painless, a mercy, really, considering what my brother has planned for you." "Go to hell," the mafia boss spit. Marcella sighed, always so dramatic. "Just like your father." She gestured to her men. "Take the child. Kill them both." The men moved forward. Maya's mind raced. The fire escape was blocked. The front door was swarming with armed men. They were trapped in a room barely 20 feet square with no cover and no options. Except... Wait! Maya pulled out her federal ID, held it up where everyone could see. "I'm a federal contractor, Department of Justice. If you kill me, you're not just killing a witness, you're killing a government asset. That brings heat you don't want." Marcella's eyes narrowed. A federal contractor working as a hotel waitress? How quaint. "I'm also the only person who knows the access codes to the hotel's maintenance tunnels," Maya lied, her voice steady despite her terror. "The ones that connect to the subway system." The ones your nephew will use to disappear if you give him 30 seconds to think. It was complete bullshit, but it was enough to make Marcella pause, to make her recalculate. You're bluffing, Marcella said. Maybe. Maya's fingers found her phone in her pocket, pressed the emergency sequence she'd set up years ago for federal contractors in danger. Silent alarm, direct to DOJ oversight. Or maybe I'm buying time for federal agents to trace this location and surround this building. How long do you think before they arrive? 5 minutes? 10? Marcella's jaw tightened. Kill them. The men raised their weapons. The Mafia boss moved faster than Maya thought possible for someone running on pure adrenaline and stubborn refusal to die. He shoved Maya and Marco toward the kitchenette, his body acting as a shield. Gunfire exploded. The Mafia boss grunted as a bullet caught him in the leg. He went down hard, but didn't let go of Marco. Maya grabbed a frying pan from the counter and threw it at the nearest gunman. It hit him in the face, buying them seconds. She hauled the Mafia boss up, dragging him toward the bathroom, the only room with a door they could lock. More gunfire. The wall behind them exploded in plaster and drywall. They made it to the bathroom, Maya slamming and locking the door. It wouldn't hold long, but... There! The Mafia boss pointed with shaking hands, a ventilation grate above the toilet. Maintenance access leads to the roof. You can't fit through that, Maya said, already knowing he'd try anyway. I'll fit or I'll die trying. He handed her Marco. You first, then pull him up, then me. Maya climbed onto the toilet, yanked off the grate, and pulled herself into the narrow duct. It was a tight squeeze, barely wide enough for her shoulders, but she managed. She reached down for Marco. The baby was crying now, terrified by the gunfire and chaos. The Mafia boss lifted him up, and Maya grabbed the yellow blanket, pulling the infant into the duct beside her. Now you, Maya said. The Mafia boss jumped, caught the edge of the duct, tried to pull himself up, but his injured shoulder gave out. He fell back, cursing. The bathroom door splintered under repeated kicks. Go! The Mafia boss roared. Get him out, please! I'm not leaving you, Maya said, but she knew she didn't have a choice. The door exploded inward. Men poured into the bathroom. The Mafia boss looked up at Maya one last time, blood streaming from his leg, his face gray with pain and resignation. Keep him safe, he whispered. Tell him I loved him. Tell him I tried. No, Maya sobbed, but she was already crawling backward, away from the opening. Marco clutched to her chest. She heard shouting below, heard the Mafia boss fighting, heard the sickening sound of impacts. Then silence. Maya crawled through the duct until she reached the roof access. She kicked it open and emerged into the rain, into the darkness, into a world where she was alone with a 3-day-old baby and no idea what to do next. Behind her, the safe house was lit up like Christmas, searchlights and muzzle flashes, and the organized chaos of a tactical takedown. They'd found him. They'd won. Maya ran. She ran across the roof, down a fire escape, through alleys she didn't recognize. Marco cried in her arms, and she ran faster, her lungs burning, her legs screaming. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know what came next. She just knew she had to keep Marco alive, had to honor the Mafia boss's last words, had to survive. Maya ran until she couldn't run anymore, until her legs gave out in an alley behind a closed restaurant. She collapsed against a dumpster, Marco wailing in her arms, and finally let herself cry. For the Mafia boss, for Carlos and his daughter, for herself and the impossible situation she'd stumbled into. But crying didn't change anything. So Maya wiped her eyes, checked on Marco, and stood up. She had a baby to protect and a promise to keep. Nothing else mattered. Maya had been hiding in the alley for 20 minutes when she heard the sirens. Multiple vehicles, coming fast. Her first instinct was to run. The police had been weaponized against her once already tonight. Why would this time be different? But Marco was crying weakly in her arms, his tiny body shaking with cold despite the blanket she'd wrapped around him. And Maya's legs wouldn't carry her another block. She was done running. If they found her, they found her. She pressed deeper into the shadows behind the dumpster, murmuring nonsense words to Marco, trying to keep him quiet even though she knew it was pointless. The vehicles screeched to a halt at the alley entrance. Doors opened. Footsteps approached. "Federal agents, show yourself!" Maya's breath caught. Federal agents, not local police, not the hunters. She stood slowly. Marco clutched to her chest, stepping into the dim light cast by the vehicle's headlights. 6 agents in tactical gear surrounded her instantly, weapons drawn but not aimed. Behind them stood a woman in a suit, late 40s, with short silver hair and the bearing of someone who gave orders and expected them followed. "Maya Brooks?" the woman called out. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. "I'm Special Agent Patricia Ramirez, FBI. We received your emergency signal 43 minutes ago. Are you hurt?" "No, but," Maya's voice cracked, "there's a man at the storage facility 3 blocks from here. He was attacked. He might be. I don't know if he's." "We have units at that location now," Ramirez said, moving closer. Her eyes dropped to Marco, then back to Maya's face. "Is that the DeLuca infant?" Maya's arms tightened around Marco protectively. "His name is Marco. He's 3 days old. He's cold and hungry and terrified. He needs medical attention." "We have paramedics standing by," Ramirez gestured to her team. "But first, I need to verify your identity, your federal credentials." Maya fumbled one-handed in her bag, pulled out the ID she'd flashed at cops and hunters and anyone who questioned her right to exist in spaces they thought she didn't belong. Ramirez took it, examined it under a flashlight, then looked back at Maya with new respect. "TS SCI clearance, DOJ contractor." She handed the ID back carefully. "You've had quite a night, Ms. Brooks." That's one way to put it. Maya's legs were shaking now, adrenaline crash hitting hard. The Mafia boss, he was shot multiple times. He protected us, me and Marco. He made sure we escaped even though it meant. Her voice broke completely. Ramirez's expression softened. "Ms. Brooks, Maya, we found him. He's alive." Maya's knees buckled. An agent caught her before she hit the ground, easing her to sit on the curb while another agent took Marco gently from her arms and wrapped him in thermal blankets. "He's alive?" Maya whispered. "Barely, but yes, my team secured the location just as Marcella DeLuca's people were." Ramirez paused, choosing her words carefully. "Preparing to execute him. We have 7 suspects in custody, including Marcella herself, and the Mafia boss is being airlifted to a secure medical facility as we speak. He was shot in the leg and the shoulder from earlier. He needs surgery. He'll get everything he needs," Ramirez assured her, "including protection. The FBI has been building a case against the DeLuca organization for 3 years. His testimony, and yours, could bring down the entire syndicate." Maya looked up sharply. "Mine?" You witnessed an attempted murder, multiple attempted murders. You have firsthand knowledge of the family's operations, their methods, their personnel. Ramirez crouched beside Maya, meeting her eyes. But more than that, you saved the life of a federal witness and his infant son. That takes extraordinary courage. I'm not courageous. Maya's laugh was broken. I'm a waitress who made a series of increasingly stupid decisions. You're a federal contractor who risked everything to protect an innocent baby and his father. Ramirez's voice was firm. That's not stupid. That's heroic. An agent approached with a phone. Ma'am, we have confirmation from the hospital. The Mafia boss is in surgery but stable. He's asking for... The agent glanced at Maya. He's asking for Maya Brooks. Won't let them sedate him until he knows she and the baby are safe. Ramirez stood, offered Maya her hand. Come on, let's get you and Marco to the hospital. I think someone needs to see you're both okay before he'll stop fighting the anesthesiologist. The hospital was 40 minutes away, a private facility with federal security and no connection to any DeLuca-owned enterprises. Maya rode in the back of an FBI vehicle with Marco in her arms, the baby finally sleeping after a paramedic checked him over and declared him miraculously unharmed. They'd offered to take Marco from her, to let someone else hold him while Maya rested. But she couldn't let go. Not yet. Agent Ramirez sat beside her, making phone calls and coordinating protection details. Between calls, she filled Maya in on what they knew. We've had Marcella DeLuca under surveillance for 6 months, Ramirez explained. We knew she was planning something, but we couldn't get close enough to gather evidence. When your emergency signal came through, we were already mobilizing based on another tip, someone inside the organization who wanted out. Who? Maya asked. Carlos Martinez, your hotel's night engineer. Ramirez pulled up a file on her tablet. He contacted us 2 hours ago, said Marcella's people had threatened his daughter, said he'd been forced to give up your location, but that he'd rather go to prison himself than let an innocent woman and baby die. He gave us everything: locations, names, operational details. Without him, we would have been too late. Maya closed her eyes, relief washing over her. Carlos had saved them. Even after betraying them, he'd found a way to make it right. What happens to him? Maya asked. Witness protection. Him and his daughter both. New identities, relocation, the full package. Ramirez smiled slightly. He asked specifically if you'd be okay. Said you once brought him homemade tamales and he owed you. Maya managed a weak laugh. I brought him leftovers from my grandmother's cooking. It wasn't anything special. Kindness is always special, Ramirez said, especially to people who aren't used to receiving it. They reached the hospital just as the Mafia boss was being wheeled out of surgery. He was barely conscious, strapped to a gurney with more tubes and monitors than Maya could count. But his eyes found her immediately as she entered the recovery area. Marco, he rasped. Right here. Maya moved to his side, Marco still bundled in her arm. He's okay, fed, warm, safe, thanks to you. The Mafia boss's hand reached out weakly, touched Marco's tiny fist. The baby's fingers curled around his father's thumb, and something in the Mafia boss's expression cracked open. Relief, love, exhaustion all mixed together. Thank you, he whispered, looking at Maya. You kept your promise. You kept him safe. We kept each other safe, Maya corrected. All 3 of us. A doctor approached, flanked by federal agents. Sir, we need to move you to a secure room, and we need to complete your medical assessment. Wait. The Mafia boss's grip tightened on Maya's hand. the first time he'd reached for her instead of just accepting her help. Don't leave. Please, I know you don't owe me anything more, but I need, Marco needs. His voice failed, but Maya understood. He was alone. His family had tried to kill him. His son's mother was gone. Every person he trusted had betrayed him except for a waitress who'd stumbled into his nightmare and refused to leave. I'm not going anywhere, Maya said firmly. She looked at Agent Ramirez. Unless federal custody means I can't. You're not in custody, Ramirez interrupted. You're under federal protection as a witness. But if you choose to stay with the Mafia boss and his son, we can arrange that. He'll need help with the baby while he recovers. And frankly, Marco seems to have bonded with you. It was true. Marco was sleeping peacefully in Maya's arms, his breathing steady and deep in a way it hadn't been all night. Every time someone else had tried to hold him, he'd cried. But with Maya, he settled. Okay, Maya said. Then I'm staying. The Mafia boss's eyes closed, relief evident even through the pain medication. Thank you, he breathed. They moved him to a private room on a secure floor, federal agents posted outside, bulletproof glass. The works. Maya sat in a chair beside his bed with Marco in her arms, watching both of them sleep. Agent Ramirez appeared in the doorway an hour later with coffee and a change of clothes. Thought you might need these, she said, setting them on the table. We'll need your full statement tomorrow, but for now, get some rest. You've earned it. What happens next? Maya asked. To him, to Marco, to me. Ramirez leaned against the doorframe. That depends. The Mafia boss has information that could dismantle one of the largest organized crime operations in the Southeast. If he cooperates, and early indications suggest he will, he'll enter witness protection. New identity, new location, new life. And Marco? Goes with his father. They'll be protected, relocated, given everything they need to start over. Ramirez paused. You could go with them, if you wanted. Your federal credentials make you an ideal candidate for extended witness protection support. And frankly, Marco needs stability. Someone he trusts. Maya looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms. 24 hours ago, she'd been worried about making rent and surviving a double shift. Now she was being offered a chance to disappear completely, to leave behind her grandmother, her sister, her entire life, to protect a baby and his father who'd been strangers until tonight. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of stupid decision she'd been making all night. Can I think about it? Maya asked. Take all the time you need, Ramirez said. But Maya, what you did tonight, protecting them, refusing to abandon them even when it would have been safer to walk away, that matters. That changed everything, not just for them, but for our entire investigation. She pushed off the doorframe, prepared to leave, then turned back. The officers who stopped you at the convenience store, they've been suspended pending investigation, and their body cam footage of how you handled the situation, how you maintained your dignity and demanded accountability, is already being used in training seminars about implicit bias and proper protocol. Maya's throat tightened. Good. Sometimes, Ramirez said softly, injustice can flip in an instant when truth is revealed, when identity is acknowledged, when people refuse to accept being treated as less than they are. She smiled. You flipped it multiple times tonight. That's powerful. After Ramirez left, Maya sat in the darkness with Marco sleeping in her arms and the Mafia boss breathing steadily in the hospital bed beside her. She thought about choices, about the moment in the alley when she could have called 911 and walked away, about every decision point after that where she could have chosen safety over compassion. She thought about her grandmother, who'd taught her that helping people wasn't about weighing consequences. It was about being able to look yourself in the mirror afterward. She thought about the federal ID in her bag that had saved her life multiple times tonight, about the authority and credentials she'd worked so hard to earn and kept hidden because power made her a target. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. The Mafia boss stirred, his eyes opening slightly. "You're still here." "I said I wasn't leaving," Maya reminded him. "You also said you weren't a hero." His voice was rough with pain and medication, "But I think you might be wrong about that." "I'm just someone who couldn't walk away from a baby crying in an alley," Maya said. "No." The Mafia boss's hand found hers again. "You're someone who saw a stranger bleeding and chose compassion over safety, who risked everything, your job, your freedom, your life, to protect people you didn't know, who refused to let injustice and violence win." He squeezed her hand weakly. "That's not just someone. That's exactly who the world needs more of." Marco chose that moment to wake, his tiny face scrunching with the promise of crying. But when Maya adjusted her hold and started rocking gently, he settled immediately, his dark eyes staring up at her with absolute trust. "He knows," the Mafia boss whispered. "He knows you're safe, that you'll protect him." "Yeah," Maya said softly, looking down at the infant who'd changed her entire life in the span of one impossible night. "I will." Outside the hospital window, dawn was breaking over Atlanta. The rain had finally stopped, and the first light of morning painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a new beginning, for all of them. Maya Brooks had gone to work yesterday hoping to survive a double shift and make rent. She was ending the night as a federal witness, a protector, and the only family a Mafia boss and his newborn son had left in the world. Life was strange like that. But looking at Marco's peaceful face, at the Mafia boss sleeping with the first hint of peace she'd seen in his expression all night, Maya thought maybe strange was exactly what they all needed. Sometimes the most unexpected people became allies. Sometimes courage looked like a waitress with a federal ID who refused to look away from suffering. Sometimes justice came not from systems and institutions, but from individual humans choosing compassion in the face of violence. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing actually worked out. Maya settled deeper into her chair, Marco warm and safe in her arms, and let herself finally rest. Tomorrow would bring statements and decisions and complications she couldn't imagine yet. But tonight, they were alive. They were safe. They were together. And that was enough. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more incredible, true stories that prove humanity still exists in the darkest places. Don't forget to comment where you're watching from, and hit that like button if this story moved you. See you in the next one.